The Four Questions of the Pandemic. After almost 2 years of living with COVID-19, we need to ask ourselves about what risks we're willing to take as a community, by Dan Ain. The first paragraph, like many other pulpit rabbis, I found myself in March 2020 facing a lot of unknowns. So he's a rabbi in San Francisco who was, did not see his congregation for a while. And the whole essay is excellent and I recommend it, but I wanted to read he asks 4 questions here, and I want to repeat one of them in his answer. What responsibility do we have as a religious community to assist people in alleviating irrational or disproportionate anxiety and fears? During times of war, social upheaval, community anxiety, and concern, should the synagogue not be the place to gather in solace, for a hug, a respite from work life, a place to take in a moment of sweet prayer? What is the risk of not having that? Is there more virtue to be found in spending more time poring over graphs of aerosol transmission spread among low-risk populations than in looking at the staggering increase in teen suicides, depression, mental health crises, and learning loss? That's just super powerful, and I know, we know some people who are not religious, don't have faith, not believers, who are looking for exactly this, for places of solace, where they can go and be around people and treat others and be treated with respect as human beings. And even most places of religious worship are requiring your proof of acts at the door. Increasingly, I'm hearing many are not, but this I would ask all of us to consider this question that Rabbi Ain asks us. And the other piece that I wanted to share from Tablet.
Wait. Before you move on from that, I just want to point out another place where you can detect that what we are doing has nothing to do with what's good for our health or what's good for the public health. Has to do with the absurd way that we have dealt with natural immunity. And I believe natural immunity, we will never know whether it has to do with the fact that you and I were shouting about natural immunity for many, many months. I suspect we contributed to the awareness of it, but nonetheless, natural immunity has finally dawned on people, but it is frequently presented in the context of the comparison to the vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. What we don't understand, and Omicron has changed the picture a little bit because there are a certain number of reinfections, but the fact of some huge fraction of the population for whom the pandemic is no longer a direct threat, irrespective of how much risk they face to begin with, the fact that they got through it, means that those people, to the extent that we have people isolated, right? Maybe we have old people isolated because they can't afford to get it, but who can non-isolate them? People in their religious communities, for example, who've had COVID, right? There are plenty of solutions, and the idea that what you're going to do is hand down from the federal government some diktat that results in a religious community effectively, turning into a 2-tiered society and not doing anything rational from the point of view of protecting the elderly, because really what you're doing is just deciding who was compliant with a vaccine that does not prevent contraction or transmission of the disease, does not reduce viral load. Right. It's an incredible waste of an opportunity. The opportunity cost of not doing the rational thing was incalculable. So anyway, the idea that the religious community has a purpose, that its purpose couldn't possibly be more important than in a moment like this, and that we are going to hobble that entity rather than do something rational, rather than come up with an actual test that lets us figure out who does have natural immunity and get on with life.
Yeah, no, and I think many liberals, again, of which we are too, take pride in our secularism. And it has been, this is something we've talked about for decades, and we write about in Hunter-Gatherer's Guide. But religion has a purpose, and those who are religious have historically done far better for themselves and their families than those who have not been. And so the very smug position of many secular liberals, that if you are religious, you have demonstrated that you're not educated, or you're not smart, or you don't believe in science, is frankly an ideological position that itself is uninvestigated. It's one of these conclusions that many people on the left have accepted without further thinking through what it actually means. So, what are some of the values of religion? It's not just about believing in a God by any means. And I mean, I remember hearing that from religious scholars at Evergreen, actually. And it was shocking to me. People who had devoted their lives and who were themselves religious, devoted their lives to the study of religious texts and to understanding what they meant, who would say, there are plenty of us who identify exactly as I do, who actually will say it's not about God. And I'm sure there are others who will disagree with that conclusion. But the idea that the only way that you can discuss religion and its value is to talk about a singular deity is really an uninvestigated ideological position that many on the left hold.
Yeah, it's a crazy position.
Yeah.
I've argued that the claims about the way the universe functions that exist in almost all religions are effectively like the trunk of a tree, right? They are a mechanism, right? Is the trunk of a tree photosynthetic? No. What is its purpose? To get the leaves of the tree above leaves that they compete with to do photosynthesis. So the point is, it is a means to an end. But the point of religion is what it does. And, we have to be careful with this because, the position I've tried to lay out. You have
to be careful because xylem and phloem are also in the trunk of the tree and they're delivering nutrients.
No, I mean, xylem and phloem are necessary to get the business end of the photosynthetic apparatus connected to the roots and all. But the point is, we have to be careful because you can overdraw this message. And in fact, what we say in our book is we live in an environment so radically different even from the environment that we were born in.
Yeah.
The farther back you go to draw wisdom, yes, there's some timeless stuff. But much of what exists in these past compendiums of wisdom is out of phase with the place we live. And so it's not like we can say, look, the point of religion is that it helps you know how to live. It did, but it helped you know how to live in an environment we don't live in anymore. So we have a new problem.
Yeah.
But the solution isn't secularism in the sense that finally we're over that religious thing. The problem is, what do we do now that our religions aren't quite up to the task of telling us how to deal with modernity?